Captain Lee Dong-min stood on the bridge of his small patrol ship, watching the stars through the front window. His ship was called the Soul Guardian, and it was one of only 20 ships that humans were allowed to have in space. The Galactic Federation had made very clear rules about human military power after Earth joined them 12 years ago. They said humans were too young and too dangerous to have big armies or powerful weapons. Lee Dong-min did not mind the rules too much. His job was simple: patrol the edges of human space and make sure no pirates or smugglers caused trouble for the farming colonies. His crew was small, just 15 people, but they were good at their work. They had stopped 3 pirate attacks this month and rescued 2 broken-down cargo ships. The other alien species in the Federation seemed to think humans were soft and weak because they followed the rules so carefully. On the farming world called New Busan, something very special was happening. Dr. Park So-young was reading a morning story to 300 children in the biggest orphanage in human space. The children came from many different worlds. Some were human kids whose parents had died in wars or accidents, but many were alien children from other species whose families had been killed in border fights between different empires. The orphanage was built in a huge green valley with rolling hills and clear streams running through it. The main building was white stone with big windows that let in lots of sunlight. There were smaller houses scattered around where the older children lived and learned different skills. The younger ones stayed in the main building where Dr. Park could watch over them more closely. Park So-young was 4 years old and had been running the orphanage for 8 years. She was not very tall, but she had kind eyes and a warm smile that made even the most scared children feel safe. The kids all called her Mama Park. Even the alien children who came from species that did not have mothers like humans did. She knew every child by name and remembered their favorite foods, their fears, and their dreams. This morning she was reading to the youngest group about a brave little rabbit who helped other forest animals when they were in trouble. The human children sat cross-legged on soft carpets, while 3 small blue alien children from the Kepler system curled up in special heated cushions. A young reptilian child from the border worlds wrapped his tail around his knees and listened with big golden eyes. The story was about friendship and helping others, which was something Dr. Park taught all her children every day. She believed that if kids from different species could grow up together and to care for each other, then maybe the galaxy would become a more peaceful place. The orphanage had become famous throughout known space. Many diplomatic visitors came to see how human compassion worked, and most went away impressed, but Dr. Park did not know that far away on Earth in a deep underground bunker, Admiral Kim Tae-ho was watching secret reports on screens that showed things the Federation was never supposed to see. Kim was 68 years old with gray hair and cold blue eyes that had seen too many wars. He had been a soldier since he was 18, and now he commanded something that officially did not exist. The bunker was hidden 3 kilometers under the mountains of Old Korea. It was connected to dozens of other secret facilities scattered across Earth. Some were built into ocean trenches, others were carved into asteroid mining stations that looked normal from the outside. For 12 years, Kim and his people had been preparing for the day when the Federation rules would not be enough to protect humanity, and the bunker engineers worked on weapons that used technology the Federation had never seen. Soldiers trained with equipment that could make a single human warrior as dangerous as an entire alien squad. Ships were being built in hidden construction yards that could appear and disappear like ghosts. Scientists worked on projects that would have terrified the alien governments if they knew such things were possible. Kim walked through the main control room where hundreds of technicians monitored communications from across the galaxy. Most of the Federation thought they knew everything about human capabilities, but they had only seen what humans wanted them to see. The real human military was hidden so well that even most humans did not know it existed. Dajun Haijin was one of Kim's top scientists. She had been working for 15 years on weapons that could destroy entire fleets with single shots. Her laboratory was built inside a dead volcano in the Pacific Ocean, where she and her team had created things that seemed impossible. The Federation scientists would have called her work magic if they had seen it. Colonel Bae Sung-ho commanded the sleeper soldiers, thousands of human warriors who stayed in special frozen sleep chambers until they were needed. These soldiers had been trained to fight aliens who were stronger, faster, or more numerous than normal humans. They had special armor and weapons that could level the playing field against any enemy the galaxy might produce. Kim knew that someday the peaceful approach would not work anymore. There were too many hostile alien empires out there who saw humans as weak prey. The Federation was good at making rules and holding meetings, but they were not good at protecting the species who could not protect themselves. When that day came, Kim wanted humanity to be ready in New Busan. Dr. Park finished his story and watched the children run outside to play in the sunshine. Some of the human kids played soccer while alien children played games from their own worlds, but they all played together, laughing and sharing toys. The older children helped the younger ones, and everyone made sure no one was left out. Teacher Han Ji-woo was helping a group of 10-year-old children plant vegetables in the orphanage garden. She showed them how to make rows in the soil and explained how different plants needed different amounts of water and sunlight. Some of the alien children had never seen plants grow before because they came from space stations or desert worlds. The orphanage had its own school where children learned mathematics, science, history, and languages, but they also learned about kindness, cooperation, and taking care of each other. Dr. Park believed these lessons were more important than anything else. If the children grew up to be good people, then they would make the galaxy a better place no matter what jobs they chose. Every evening, Dr. Park would walk through all the buildings making sure every child was safe and happy. She would check on the sick ones, give hugs to those who missed their families, and tell bedtime stories to anyone who had trouble sleeping. The children felt completely safe in their home among the green hills of New Busan, but in the darkness of space, something evil was watching and planning. The Vorthok Empire had been studying human settlements for months. Their reptilian scouts had mapped every human world and identified the weakest targets. They had decided that the famous Orphanage would send the perfect message about human vulnerability. General Vorthok Grimskill looked at the intelligence reports about New Busan and smiled with his sharp teeth. The place had almost no defenses, just a few security guards and some basic shields around the main buildings. The Federation had a small patrol station 3 hours away, but their response time would be much too slow. The Vorthok military machine was built for conquest and intimidation. They had destroyed 17 civilizations in the past decade and added their territories to the growing empire. Most species surrendered quickly when they saw Vorthok ships in their skies because everyone knew that resistance meant complete destruction. Grimsel had fought many wars, but he had never faced humans in real combat. The intelligence report said humans were restricted to small patrol ships and had no significant military installations. The Federation seemed to treat them like children who needed protection and guidance. This made them perfect targets for demonstrating Vorthok power. As Dr. Park tucked the last children into their beds that night, she looked out the window at the peaceful stars and felt grateful for the quiet life they had built. The children were safe, the harvest was good, and tomorrow would bring another day of learning and growing together. She had no idea that invisible ships were already moving through hyperspace toward her. World Admiral Kim sat in his underground office, looking at the same stars through hidden cameras positioned around the solar system. His sensors could detect ships moving faster than light from very far away, but tonight everything seemed normal. The galaxy appeared peaceful, but Kim knew that peace was always temporary. He opened his desk drawer and looked at an old photograph of himself as a young soldier standing with his unit after their first battle. His friends were all smiling, but Kim remembered how scared they had been. The Federation had saved Earth that day by arriving just in time to stop an alien invasion. That was when humanity decided to join the galactic community and follow their rules, but Kim also remembered the cost of depending on others for protection. Too many good people had died waiting for help that came too late. He had spent his entire career making sure that would never happen again. If enemies came for humanity, they would find a very different species than they expected. The night passed quietly on New Busan, with children sleeping safely in their beds, while on Earth machines hummed in hidden bunkers, preparing for a war that no one wanted but everyone feared was coming. The morning started like every other morning on New Busan. Dr. Park Soyoung woke up at 6 o'clock and walked through the quiet halls of the orphanage, checking on the children who were still sleeping. The early sunlight came through the big windows, making everything look warm and golden. She could hear birds singing in the trees outside and smell the flowers that grew in the gardens around the building's end. The buildings in the kitchen, the cooking staff was already preparing breakfast for 300 children. They made pancakes and eggs for the human kids, while preparing special foods for the alien children who needed different nutrition. The blue children from Kepler ate a kind of sweet paste that looked like honey, while the reptilian kids needed raw meat mixed with special vitamins. By 7:30, most of the children were awake and getting dressed. The younger ones needed help from the older kids or from the teachers. Everyone helped everyone else, because that was the way things worked. At the orphanage, Dr. Park walked through the dormitories, making sure everyone was ready for breakfast and the day ahead. 8-year-old Choi Min-jun was helping his little sister tie her shoes. She was only 5 and still learning how to do things by herself. Min-jun had been at the orphanage for 3 years after their parents died in a transport accident. He was a serious boy who took care of the younger children like a big brother. He always made sure his sister ate her breakfast and brushed her teeth in the main dining hall, or the children sat together at long tables. Human children sat next to alien children, and everyone shared their food and talked about their plans for the day. Some of the older children were excited about their science class, while the younger ones wanted to play in the gardens. Teacher Han Ju was helping serve breakfast while telling funny stories that made everyone laugh. Da Park stood at the front of the dining hall watching her children eat and talk. She felt proud of how well they all got along despite coming from different worlds and different species. This was what the galaxy could be like if everyone learned to care for each other instead of fighting wars and building weapons. At exactly 8:15 in the morning, something changed. The children were still eating breakfast and talking when the air suddenly felt different. Dr. Park noticed at first a strange humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Then the windows, it started to shake, and some of the younger children looked scared. Up in space above New Busan, 12 Orthox stealth ships had just dropped out of hyperspace. There were long black vessels that looked like giant spears with weapon pods attached to their sides. General Grimscale himself was commanding the lead ship from his throne on the bridge. He looked down at the peaceful farming world below and felt satisfied the Vorthok had planned this attack very carefully. They knew exactly where the orphanage was located, and they had studied the building plans to know where the children would be at this time of day. The attack would last exactly 10 minutes, long enough to destroy everything but short enough to escape before any Federation ships could respond. Grimskull gave the order to begin, and 12 ships opened fire at the same time. Plasma bombs fell from the sky like burning rain. Each bomb was designed to create maximum destruction and terror. The first bombs hit the east wing of the main building where the oldest children had their classrooms. The explosion was louder than thunder and brighter than lightning. The entire east wing disappeared in a ball of fire and smoke. The force of the blast threw Dr. Park across the dining hall and knocked dozens of children to the floor. Tables and chairs went flying, while pieces of the ceiling crashed down on top of screaming. Kidsman June grabbed his little sister and pulled her toward the emergency exits that Dr. Park had made them practice using every month. His sister was crying and could not understand what was happening, but Minjun remembered the safety drills. They had to get to the underground shelters before the building collapsed. Jahan Jiwoo threw herself on top of a group of small alien children when she saw more bombs falling toward their section of the building. The blue children from Kepler were too scared to move, and the reptilian child was making high-pitched sounds of terror. Han Jiwoo covered them with her body as burning debris fell all around them. More bombs exploded in the gardens and the smaller dormitory buildings. The playground where children had been playing just minutes before was now a crater filled with twisted metal and burning wood. The vegetable garden where they had been learning to grow food was completely destroyed. Park tried to stand up, but her leg was broken and bleeding. She could hear children crying and calling for help, but the smoke was so thick she could barely see anything. The fire alarms were screaming and emergency lights were flashing red. The beautiful orphanage was turning into a nightmare. Some of the older children helped the younger ones reach the emergency shelters, but many kids were trapped under fallen beams and broken concrete. The older human boy named Kim Daeho was trying to lift a heavy piece of wall that had fallen on 3 small children. His hands were bleeding, but he would not give up. The Vorthok ships kept firing for exactly 10 minutes, just as they had planned. They targeted every building, every vehicle, and every structure that could provide shelter. Their plasma weapons turned the peaceful valley into a burning wasteland. The green hills were now black with smoke and fire. When the attack finally stopped, the silence was almost worse than the explosions. Dr. Park could hear children crying in the distance, but many voices that should have been there were now quiet forever. The main building was half destroyed, and the other buildings were either gone or burning. Emergency signals were being sent automatically to the Federation patrol station and to other human colonies. Captain Lee Dongmin received the distress call on his ship, but he was 3 hours away at maximum speed. He immediately changed course and pushed his engines to their limits, but he knew he would arrive too late. The Vorthok command ship General Grimscale watched the destruction through his senses and felt pleased the attack had gone exactly as planned. The famous human orphanage was destroyed, and the message was clear: humans were weak and had no one to protect them. The Federation would offer sympathy, but no real help. The Vorthok ships disappeared back into hyperspace, leaving only smoke and ruins behind. Rescue ships from the nearby farming settlements were already on their way, but they were small civilian vessels with limited medical equipment. The real rescue teams would not arrive for hours. Dr. Park crawled through the wreckage looking for her children. She found some of them alive, but hurt, while others would never wake up again. She tried to count how many were missing, but there was too much smoke and too much destruction. Her heart was breaking as she realized how many of her kids were gone forever. Minjin found his little sister in one of the emergency shelters. She was scared but not badly hurt. He held her close while they waited for help to come. Many other children were in the shelters, but too many were still missing. The older kids tried to comfort the younger ones, but everyone was afraid. Teacher Han Ji-woo was badly injured, but the alien children she had protected were alive. The blue children stayed close to her, even though she could barely move. The reptilian child kept making soft sounds that meant thank you in his language. Hanju smiled at them, even though she was in terrible pain. As the hours passed, rescue teams finally arrived from other human worlds. They brought medical equipment and emergency supplies, but it was clear that the damage was enormous. The beautiful orphanage that had been a symbol of hope and peace was now a symbol of tragedy and loss. Dr. Park was taken to a station where doctors worked to save her life. She kept asking about her children and trying to give the rescue workers the names of everyone who might still be trapped in the ruins. Her voice was getting weaker, but she would not stop trying to help. The news of the attack spread across the galaxy within hours. Every human colony received the terrible reports along with images of the destroyed orphanage. The Federation issued statements of concern and promised to investigate, but their response, it seemed weak and inadequate. Captain Lee Dongmin finally arrived at New Busan and saw the destruction with his own eyes. He had been a soldier before becoming a patrol captain, and he had seen many terrible things, but this was different. These were children who had been murdered for no reason except to send a message. The final count was devastating. 197 children had died in the attack, along with most of the teachers and staff. Only 103 children survived, and many of them were badly injured. The galaxy had lost something precious and innocent that could never be replaced. Park Soyoung died that evening after giving the rescue workers the names of all the missing children. Her last words were about making sure the surviving kids would be taken care of. The woman who had devoted her life to protecting children had died trying to save them until her very last breath. The Vorthok Empire broadcast their victory message across all human colonies. That same night they claimed responsibility for the attack and demanded that all humans leave their outer worlds within 30 days. Any human ships found outside Earth's solar system after that deadline would be destroyed without warning. The Federation Council met in emergency session and offered their condolences to humanity. They promised to negotiate with the Vorthok Empire and find a peaceful solution, but they made it clear that they— Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood in the smoking ruins of the orphanage 3 days after the attack. The rescue teams had finished their work and the bodies had been taken away, but the smell of burned buildings and death still hung in the air. He held a small teddy bear in his hands that had belonged to one of the children. The bear was burned and dirty, but Kim gripped it tightly. Captain Lee Dongmin walked up to the admiral carefully. He had never seen Kim show emotion before, but now the old man's face was like stone. His blue eyes were cold as winter ice, and everyone around him could feel the anger radiating from his body. Lee knew that this moment would change everything for humanity. Kim looked around at the destroyed buildings where children had played and learned and grown up safe. He thought about Dr. Park Soyoung, who had died trying to save her kids. He thought about the Federation Council, who had offered pretty words but no real help. The alien governments had made it clear that human lives were not worth fighting for. That night Kim returned to his secret bunker deep under the mountains of Earth. He walked into the main control room where hundreds of technicians were waiting for his orders. They had been preparing for this day for 12 years, but they had always hoped it would never come. Now there was no choice left. Kim activated the emergency protocols that had been sleeping in computer systems all across Earth and the human colonies. Suddenly machines that had been silent for years started humming with power. Hidden factories began producing weapons and ships that had existed only in blueprints. Secret training facilities opened their doors to reveal soldiers who had been waiting in frozen sleep. Dr. Hyjin received the activation signal in her laboratory inside the dead volcano. She had been working on quantum torpedoes that could destroy entire fleets with single shots. Her weapons used technology that was 50 years ahead of anything that the Federation had ever seen. Now it was time to see if her theories worked in real combat. Colonel Bae Sung-ho began the awakening process for 10,000 sleeper soldiers. These men and women had been specially trained to fight alien enemies who were stronger or faster than normal humans. They had been kept in cryogenic chambers for years, waiting for the day when humanity would need them all. Across the human colonies, amazing things started happening. The peaceful farming worlds suddenly revealed hidden weapon systems that had been built into their infrastructure. Mining asteroids opened up to show massive gun batteries that could destroy battleships. Transport ships that had been carrying crops and supplies for years suddenly sprouted weapon arrays that had been hidden in their cargo holds. The transformation was swift and terrifying. Within 72 hours, human space changed from a collection of defenseless colonies into the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. Every human world was now a fortress. Every human ship was now a warship, and every human citizen was now a potential soldier. The most shocking revelation came when Earth's moon suddenly split open like a flower. The entire satellite had been hollowed out and converted into the largest military shipyard in known space. Hundreds of warships that had been built in complete secrecy began emerging from the lunar surface. These ships were painted black as night and carried no identification, except for small images of teddy bears. The Federation monitoring stations watched in stunned silence as the human fleet assembled. The ships were unlike anything in their databases. They were larger than Federation dreadnoughts but moved faster than light cruisers. Their weapon signatures showed energy levels that should have been impossible with known technology. Admiral Kim stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Vengeance of New Busan, and looked out at the fleet he had spent years building. The ship was so large that it could carry entire squadrons of fighters in its hangar bays. Its weapons could crack planets, and its shields could withstand the combined fire of a dozen enemy fleets. The alien governments who had dismissed humanity as weak and harmless suddenly realized they had made a terrible mistake. The Federation Council called emergency meetings trying to understand how humans had hidden such massive military power for so long. Their intelligence services had completely failed to detect the scope of human preparations. General Grimscale of the Vorthok Empire received reports about the human fleet with growing concern. His intelligence officers had assured him that humans had no significant military capabilities, but the sensor readings from the Federation showed ships that could easily destroy his entire empire. The attack on the orphanage was supposed to demonstrate human weakness, but instead it had awakened something terrible. The first sign of what was coming occurred when 12 Vorthok patrol fleets simply vanished from space in a single night. Their ships were there one moment and gone the next, with no distress signals or wreckage left behind. The human ships moved through hyperspace like ghosts, appearing without warning to destroy entire squadrons before disappearing. Again, Captain Park Ji-han was Dr. Park Soyoung's nephew, and he commanded one of the most dangerous human ships, the Orphan's Wrath. His crew had all lost family members, in Vorthok attacks, and they fought with a precision and fury that terrified their enemies. They specialized in hunting down Vorthok commanders who had participated in the massacre. Jihan and his crew would disable enemy ships instead of destroying them, then board the vessels and systematically eliminate every Vorthok warrior they found. They would broadcast footage of these battles to other Vorthok fleets, showing exactly what happened to those who killed human children. The psychological effect was devastating. The Federation tried desperately to arrange peace talks, but Admiral Kim refused all communication attempts. Human forces had gone completely silent, except for brief messages demanding the surrender of everyone who had participated. In the Orphanage attack, the Federation realized that their newest members had just declared war on one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. Major Li Sujin commanded the human ground forces that began landing on Vorthok-controlled worlds. Her soldiers wore advanced armor that made them nearly invulnerable to conventional weapons. They moved through enemy positions like an unstoppable force, liberating worlds that had been under Vorthok control for decades. The liberated populations were amazed by how the human soldiers behaved. Unlike the Vorthok, who had ruled through fear and cruelty, the humans treated civilians with the same kindness that had been shown at the orphanage. They provided medical care, food, and protection to anyone who needed it, regardless of their species. Many of the freed aliens volunteered to fight alongside the humans, providing intelligence about Vorthok operations and serving as guides on unfamiliar worlds. They had seen what human compassion it looked like, and they wanted to help destroy the empire that had enslaved them. The Vorthok military doctrine was built around intimidating weaker species into submission, but humans seemed to become stronger and more determined with each battle. Every defeat only made them fight harder. Every loss only increased their resolve. The empire that had conquered 17 star systems in a decade was now in full retreat. Admiral Kim received reports from his fleet commanders about the progress of the war. The humans were winning every engagement they fought, but Kim was not satisfied with simple victory. He wanted the Vorthok to understand that attacking human children was the worst mistake they could ever make. The hidden human military had capabilities that shocked even the Federation Council. Human cyber warfare units were dismantling Vorthok communication networks, making it impossible for their fleets to coordinate their movements. Human intelligence services seemed to know every Vorthok military secret while keeping their own operations completely hidden. Dr. Hyjin watched her quantum torpedoes perform exactly as she had designed them. A single torpedo could destroy a Vorthok battleship, while conventional weapons barely scratched their armor. The human ships carried hundreds of these weapons, giving them firepower that no enemy could match. Colonel Bae-Su-ho led his awakened soldiers in ground assaults that were more like surgical strikes than conventional battles. His troops could take heavily fortified positions with minimal casualties, while inflicting devastating losses on the defenders. The Vorthok had never faced enemies who combined such advanced technology with such fierce determination. Galaxy watched in amazement as humanity revealed its true nature. The species that had seemed so peaceful and harmless was actually the most dangerous military force anyone had ever encountered. Their ships were faster, their weapons were more powerful, and their soldiers were more skilled than anything the established powers possessed. Within 6 months, the mighty Vorthok Empire was falling apart. Their outer territories had been liberated, their fleets had been destroyed, and their remaining forces were trapped in their home system. The empire that had terrorized the galaxy for decades was now begging the Federation for protection from human revenge. Admiral Kim looked at the burned teddy bear on his desk and thought about the children that had died in the orphanage. The Federation had failed to protect them, but humanity would never fail again. The galaxy had learned that there were some things worth fighting for, no matter what the cost. The human fleet assembled for the final assault on the Vorthok homeworld. Every ship carried the image of a teddy bear to remember the children who had died. Every soldier wore a patch with the names of the hunt for the Vorthok Empire had begun, and it was unlike any war the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships moved through space like deadly shadows, appearing wherever Vorthok forces tried to regroup. The enemy had no safe harbors, no secure communication lines, and no way to predict where the next attack would come from. General Grimscale sat in his command bunker on the Vorthok homeworld, watching his empire crumble on dozens of tactical displays. Red markers showed human fleet positions, while green markers showed his own forces. The green markers were disappearing faster than his staff could update the maps. His intelligence officers had stopped trying to track human movements because the enemy ships seemed to be everywhere at once. Park Ji-hun stood on the bridge of the Orphan's Wrath, studying the sensor readings of his next target. A Vorthok heavy cruiser was trying to escape to a neutral system, but human ships had already cut off all the escape routes. The cruiser was commanded by Subgeneral Krath, who had personally supervised the bombing of the orphanage. Park Ji-hun had made it his personal mission to hunt down every Vorthok officer who had participated in the attack on the children. His ship was specially designed for this kind of work. It could disable enemy vessels without destroying them, allowing his boarding teams to capture the crews alive. The fate that awaited captured Vorthok officers was worse than a quick death in battle. The Orphan's Wrath closed in on the enemy cruiser using stealth technology that made it invisible to Vorthok sensors. The human ship was only half the size of the cruiser, but its weapons were far more advanced. A single shot from its main gun punched through the shields and disabled their engines without breaching the hull. General Kraft tried to activate his ship's self-destruct system, but human cyber warfare specialists had already taken control of his computers. The Vorthok crew found themselves trapped aboard their own ship, while human soldiers cut through the airlock doors with weapons that melted metal like butter. Park Ji-han led the boarding team, personally wearing black armor that made him look like death itself. The Vorthok warriors tried to fight, but their weapons barely scratched the human battlesuits, while human weapons cut through Vorthok armor like paper. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes before every enemy soldier was dead. General Kraft was brought before Park Ji-han. In the cruiser's command center, the Vorthok officer was bleeding from several wounds. But still alive, Park Ji-han activated a recording device and began asking questions about the orphanage attack. He wanted names, locations, and details about everyone who had been involved. When Kraft refused to answer, Park Ji-han showed him images of the dead children from the orphanage. Each picture was accompanied by the child's name, age, and favorite activity. The human captain spoke in a calm voice as he explained exactly what would happen to every Vorthok who had participated in the massacre. The recording was broadcast to every Vorthok military frequency, showing what happened to officers who killed human children. Other human ships were conducting similar operations across Vorthok space. Each captured enemy commander provided more information about the attack, which led to more targets for human revenge. Major Lee Soo-jin was leading ground operations on the Vorthok colony world of Skerax. Her soldiers had landed during the night and were systematically destroying every military installation on the planet. The Vorthok defenders had never faced enemies like these. Human troops moved faster than seemed possible, and their weapons could punch through any armor. The human soldiers wore powered armor that enhanced their strength and speed while protecting them from all conventional weapons. They carried rifles that fired plasma bolts capable of melting through tank armor and grenades that could level entire buildings. Their helmets displayed tactical information that let them see enemies through walls. Lee Soo-jin watched her troops advance through the enemy fortifications like an unstoppable tide. The Vorthok had built their defenses to stop conventional armies, but humans fought with tactics that seemed impossible. Individual soldiers could take on entire squads of enemies, while human vehicles moved faster than Vorthok aircraft. The most terrifying aspect of the human ground forces was their discipline. They followed strict rules of engagement that protected civilian populations while showing no mercy to military targets. Vorthok civilians who surrendered were treated with medical care and protection, while soldiers who resisted were eliminated without hesitation. On the liberated world of Kalani, former Vorthok slaves watched in amazement as human engineers rebuilt their destroyed cities. The humans brought advanced construction equipment that could erect new buildings in days, while medical teams treated injuries that local doctors had considered hopeless. A young Kalani engineer named Zeth had watched the Vorthok destroy his people's civilization 5 years earlier. Now he worked alongside human technicians, learning about technologies that seemed like magic. The humans shared their knowledge freely while asking for nothing in return except help in locating Vorthok military assets. The liberated populations provided human intelligence teams with detailed information about Vorthok operations. Every freed world became a base for further human advances, while the local populations served as guides and translators. The galaxy was learning that humans did not conquer worlds, they liberated them. Dr. Yoon Hae-jin monitored the performance of her quantum weapons from her volcano laboratory. The torpedoes were exceeding all expectations. A single weapon could disable ships that would normally require hours of bombardment to defeat. Her research team was already working on even more advanced systems for future conflicts. The Federation Council met in emergency session, trying to understand how the balance of power had shifted so dramatically. Ambassador Thek of the Wriggle Confederation demanded to know why the Federation had never detected human military capabilities. Council leader Vash admitted that their intelligence services had been completely fooled. Federation military commanders studied recordings of human ships in action and realized they were seeing technology that was decades ahead of their own capabilities. Human vessels moved faster, accelerated quicker, and carried weapons that could destroy entire fleets. The tactical implications were staggering. Some Federation members began to worry that humanity might turn its attention to other targets after finishing with the Vorthok. The humans had revealed military power that could threaten any government in the galaxy. What would stop them from deciding that other species needed to be conquered or eliminated? But reports from liberated worlds told a different story. Human forces were behaving with remarkable restraint. They destroyed military targets while protecting civilians. They provided aid to refugees while respecting local customs. They were fighting a war of liberation rather than conquest. Admiral Kim received daily reports about the progress of the campaign. Human forces were advancing on all fronts while Vorthok resistance collapsed. The enemy empire was now confined to less than 20 star systems, and their remaining fleets were trapped in defensive positions. The psychological impact of human tactics was devastating. Vorthok morale had completely collapsed as news spread about what happened to officers who had attacked the orphanage. The empire that had ruled through fear now lived in terror of human revenge. Colonel Bae Sung-ho led his special forces in operations behind enemy lines. His soldiers could infiltrate Vorthok installations without being detected. and eliminate entire command structures before anyone realized they were under attack. The enemy had no defense against human stealth technology. The Vorthok tried to negotiate with neutral governments to arrange a ceasefire, but humanity rejected all attempts at diplomacy. Admiral Kim had made it clear that the war would continue until every person responsible for the orphanage attack had been captured or killed. General Grimscale realized that his empire was doomed. The humans had superior technology, better tactics, and most importantly, unlimited determination. His species had made the mistake of thinking that killing children would make humans surrender when it actually made them unstoppable. The final Vorthok strongholds were falling, one by one, as human forces closed in on the home system planets that had been Vorthok. Military bases for centuries were being liberated by armies that seemed to appear from nowhere. The empire that had terrorized the galaxy was experiencing terror. For the first time, Captain Lee Dongmin had been assigned to escort refugee ships from former Vorthok worlds to safety. His small patrol vessel was now part of a massive human fleet that included ships capable of destroying planets. The transformation of human space had been complete and overwhelming. The galaxy watched in fascination and fear as humanity demonstrated what happened when their compassion was replaced by righteous anger. The species that had been dismissed as weak and harmless had revealed themselves to be the most dangerous military force in known space. As human forces prepared for the final assault on the Vorthok home system, Admiral Kim looked once more at the burned teddy bear on his desk. The children of the orphanage would soon be avenged, but their deaths had unleashed something that would change the galaxy forever. Federation had learned too late that underestimating humanity was a fatal mistake. The species they had treated as children requiring protection had grown up to become the galaxy's most feared warriors. The hunt was almost over, but the consequences would last for generations. The final battle for the Vorthok home system began at dawn. Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood on the bridge of the Vengeance of New Busan, watching as his fleet emerged from hyperspace around the enemy capital world. The Vorthok had assembled every remaining ship they possessed in a desperate last stand, but their entire force was smaller than a single human battle group. General Grimscale commanded the defense from his flagship, the Scales of Conquest, surrounded by the remnants of what had once been the galaxy's most feared military. The Vorthok home fleet included 200 warships, but they were facing over 1,000 human vessels that carried weapons beyond their understanding. The battle began when the Vorthok opened fire with everything. They had their plasma cannons and missile batteries, unleashed a storm of destruction that would have annihilated any conventional fleet. But the human ships absorbed the attack with shields that seemed impossible, while their black holes remained undamaged. Admiral Kim gave the order to return fire, and the space around the Vorthok homeworld lit up with energy beams that could cut through planets. Human quantum torpedoes streaked across the void, each one capable of destroying multiple enemy ships. The Vorthok fleet began disappearing under the overwhelming firepower. Captain Park Ji-han guided the Orphans' Wrath through the battle, seeking his primary target, General Grimscale's flagship. His ship darted between the massive capital ships like a deadly fighter, while its weapons picked off Vorthok cruisers that got in his way. The hunt for the architect of the Orphanage massacre was almost over. The battle lasted 18 hours as human forces systematically destroyed every military asset in the system. The enemy fought with the desperation of a cornered animal, but their weapons could not penetrate human defenses, while human weapons cut through their armor like it was made of paper. General Grimscale watched his empire die around him as ship after ship disappeared from his tactical displays. His communications officer reported that they were receiving surrender signals from Vorthok colonies across the galaxy. The empire that had taken decades to build was collapsing. In a single day, Captain Park Ji-han finally disabled Grimscale's flagship with a precisely targeted shot that knocked out their engines without destroying the ship. His boarding teams cut through the hull and fought their way to the command center, where the Vorthok general waited with his personal guards. The final battle aboard the Scales of Conquest lasted only minutes as human soldiers in powered armor overwhelmed the Vorthok defenders. Park Ji-han found Grimscale wounded but alive in his command throne. The reptilian general looked up at his captor with eyes that showed fear for the first time in his life. Park Ji-han had Grimscale brought aboard the Vengeance of New Busan, where Admiral Kim was waiting in a chamber decorated with pictures of all the children who had died at the orphanage. The old admiral looked at the Vorthok general with cold blue eyes while holding the burnt teddy bear that had become his symbol. Kim offered Grimscale a choice that would determine the fate of his entire species. The Vorthok could face complete extinction as humanity hunted down every member of their race, or they could surrender unconditionally and spend the next century rebuilding the worlds they had destroyed. Realized that the humans had the power to carry out either option. Their fleet could sterilize every Vorthok world, while their ground forces could hunt down any survivors who tried to hide. The general who had terrorized the galaxy now faced the same hopelessness his victims had felt. The Vorthok general chose surrender, but warned Admiral Kim that other alien empires would now see humanity as a threat that needed to be eliminated before it grew even stronger. The galaxy would unite against the humans just as they had united against other species that became too powerful. Kim listened to this warning with no expression on his face, then informed Grimscale that humanity had been preparing for that possibility as well. The military force that had destroyed the Vorthok Empire was only a small fraction of what humans could deploy if necessary. The aftermath of the war shocked the galaxy more than the fighting itself. Humanity had not only defeated the Vorthok Empire in less than a year but had done so while following strict rules of engagement that protected civilian populations. Human soldiers had shown the same compassion in victory that Dr. Park So-young had shown in peace. Human fleets began patrolling the frontier zones, where pirates and slavers had operated freely for decades, bringing law and order to regions the Federation had written off as hopeless. The black ships with their teddy bear emblems became symbols of protection for the weak and innocent. The liberated, the worlds that had suffered under Vorthok rule welcomed human protection with celebration. Millions of former slaves were now free to rebuild their civilizations with human assistance. Advanced human technology helped repair the damage of decades, while human medical teams treated injuries that local doctors could not heal on Earth. Construction began on the largest refugee center in the galaxy. Survivors from the orphanage. Bombing would oversee facilities that could house millions of displaced beings from across known space. The children who had survived the massacre would grow up to become leaders in the new galactic order. The Federation Council finally acknowledged what everyone already knew: humanity was now the dominant military power. In their region of space, they offered Admiral Kim a permanent seat on the council and tried to negotiate new treaties that would bring human forces under Federation oversight. Kim politely declined all offers of political integration and announced that humanity would maintain its own territory, while protecting any species that requested their help. The Federation could continue making rules and holding meetings, but humans would no longer depend on others for their security. Diet emerged from her volcano laboratory to establish research centers on dozens of worlds where human and alien scientists could work together on projects that would benefit everyone. Her quantum weapons technology was adapted for peaceful purposes, like asteroid mining and planetary engineering. Colonel Bae-Soon-jo became the first commander of the Human Protection Force, a military organization dedicated to defending innocent populations throughout the galaxy. His soldiers established bases on liberated worlds where they trained local forces to maintain their own security. Major Lee Soo-jin founded the Galactic Relief Corps, which provided disaster assistance and humanitarian aid to any world that needed help. Her engineers could rebuild destroyed cities in months, while her medical teams brought advanced treatments to species that had never seen such technology. The rebuilt world of New Busan became the center of the new galactic order. A magnificent orphanage rose from the ashes of the old one, but this time it was protected by orbital defense platforms and a permanent fleet presence. The new facility could house 10,000 children from hundreds of different species. The children who lived in the new orphanage came from every corner of the galaxy, refugees from wars and disasters who found safety and hope among the green hills where the original orphans had died. They played in gardens that were monuments to peace while studying in schools that taught compassion. Alongside mathematics, Captain Lee Dong-men was promoted to admiral and given command of the human patrol fleets that kept the space lanes safe. His ships were no longer limited to small defensive vessels, but included cruisers and battleships that could face any threat. The galaxy had become a safer place for honest travelers. The Vorthok survivors were relocated to agricultural worlds, where they worked to grow food for the refugees they had created. Their military was completely disbanded, while their government was replaced by a council that included representatives from every species. They had a priest. Admiral Kim kept his office in the underground bunker where he had planned the war, but now the screens showed peaceful scenes from across human space: children playing in gardens, ships carrying supplies to needy worlds, and construction projects that would benefit millions of beings. The burned teddy bear remained on his desk as a reminder of the price of peace and the responsibility that came with power. Humanity had introduced total fight to the galaxy, but they had also shown that strength without compassion was merely brutality. The Federation learned to work with humanity rather than trying to control them. Human technology and resources were shared freely with any government that requested assistance, while human military forces provided security for trade routes and colony worlds. Other alien empires that had watched the destruction of the Vorthok with interest decided that challenging humanity would be unwise. The black ships with teddy bear emblems patrolled the borders of human space, serving as a constant reminder of what happened to those who threatened innocent children. The galaxy had found new leadership in the species that had seemed weakest and most harmless. Humanity had proven that compassion and strength could exist together, and that the desire to protect others was the most powerful force in the universe. Years passed, and the children of New Busan grew up in a universe that was safer and kinder than the one that had existed before the orphanage bombing. They learned about the price their predecessors had paid and the responsibility they carried as the next generation of galactic citizens. The new order was not perfect and challenges remained, but the galaxy had learned an important lesson.